9:31. We're going live at 9:31. Hey, my mom's going, okay. I just heard her from the living room. I'm leaving the living room door open today, guys, because it's freezing in here. It's cold. And the wood stove heats the house, and the wood stove's in the living room, and this studio is not in the living room. Anyway, welcome to the live stream of today's show. I'm back in the office after having been at Jack Spirko's last week. And we're going to do a fun show today. I'm doing the best I can. You can probably hear a little scratch in my voice. I came home from Jack's with a gift. It started with laryngitis on Monday. And then it turned out that I have the thing that everybody's afraid of, which I wouldn't know except for somebody who lives in my household has never had it. So I thought I'd better find out if it's that thing. And it is. And then other people got the thing, and there's a lot of people with the thing right now. So I can tell you, having had this thing before, that it's way milder this time. I thought it was a cold with a fever. That's what it felt like. And it's doing the thing it does, which is you feel better and then you feel worse at night. You feel better, you feel worse at night. So no big deal. But it has slowed me down a little bit this week. It's, everything has taken a little longer because I've decided if I need to rest, I rest. And I wanted to show you this too. Check this out. This is the new Hollow Roast mug for the stuffed mug product online at hollowroast.com. We send this out with 6 ounces of coffee, which roughly it kind of fits inside there for a gift, or you can just get the mug itself. I love it. It's kind of like a diner mug style, but it's a little bit taller than the typical diner mug. And they finally arrived. They were late. So anybody who ordered one, like I know one of you who's usually on this live stream ordered one right away. And I was like, it's not shipping till Monday of this week. And then it's like, it did not ship Monday because it did not arrive. Yes, you're going to get an orange one of these. There were only 20 orange ones. You got one of the orange ones. And they will ship out either today or Monday, depending. I actually have stayed completely out of the roasting shack this week. Michelle has done roasting for me, because when I am sick, I don't roast coffee and ship it because I don't want to ship any extras with the coffee, if you know what I mean. So she's come in 3 days this week. She's coming in today and roasting while we do this live stream. And actually, I may end up, trying to multitask. Come to think of it, I didn't print her labels. I did print her roasting schedule, though. There's quite a lot. The cool thing at this time of year is we've quadrupled our order volume in the last week because Christmas is coming. People are getting stuff for gifts, so that's kind of cool. But that just means that there's no putting off roasting at all. I mean, I don't like to put off roasting anyway. I like to roast every day, but when I'm like this, I don't roast at all. And she did. So that is what it is. Anyway, here's how it's going to go, my friends from the live audience. We're going to wait a 5-second pause. I'm going to record the actual Homestead Happenings update podcast. And then I have invited Holler Neighbors to come on. I'm not sure if they will. Tactical probably will. He has all sorts of opinions about sheep today, and one of them in particular. And Mama Sauce might poke in and say hi. You can say hi if you want to.
I can.
Yeah, okay. She's not going to, though.
I will.
Okay. She's holding dirty laundry. And we'll just have the Holler Neighbor Q&A session after this. There's been a lot, like with the Eversoles moving in down at base camp. It took us a little while to find our neighborhood cohesion, but that's really come together. Yeah, Andrew, it's a cool mug. Cool mug. Yeah, I got sick, and if I go into a coughing fit in the middle of this, just bear with me. One time, guys, when I had pneumonia, like recording shows was the worst. I would get like 15 minutes and have to take a half-hour break, and then 15 minutes and have to take a half-hour break. Now, Packrat says, excuse me, he thought my laryngitis was karaoke induced. The answer is not usually, although I will not say it's out of scope of having had that hit my vocal cords harder than usual. They usually get a little bit like, not raw, but a little bit like, hey, you used me more than usual after 3 or 4 days of karaoke every night. But usually they're in good enough shape. That's not a big deal. I just bounce back. I try to use mostly proper vocal technique while I'm doing that. Although anybody who saw my rendition of Add It Up by the Violent Femmes knows that was not proper vocal technique, but it was fun. And That shouldn't have been enough to put me over. So when I completely lost my voice on Monday, like completely lost my voice on Monday, I was like, huh, that's weird. And then I started sneezing. I was like, oh, I have a cold. So it probably made the vocal part worse, but it is what it is, right? This is actually better than I've been all week. I managed to suck it up for Wednesday. That was good. I've got these like throat lozenges here, and I'm like, how do I take a throat lozenge on video without it looking totally obvious? I'm like, who cares? I'm just going to do what I do. Anyway, 5-second pause. We're going to record the podcast. If you have questions, right? Just go ahead and put them in first couple letters in all caps. And I will star those for later, or if they work into what I'm talking about when I see them, which is sometimes delayed from when you say them, I'll work them into the podcast. If not, we'll save them for the Q&A section. I will, usually I have all my notes for the Q&A from email. I don't right now. So I'll just go into email and see what's in the Q&A folder. And if there's nothing there, there's nothing there. If you emailed a Q&A in and it doesn't come out on this show, it'll come out next week. I have a lot of backlog email to go through after being gone for a week. So it's possible some of those will be delayed. So let's do it. Welcome to Living Free in Tennessee, where we talk about building the life you choose on your terms. Today is Friday, November 18th, 2022, and this is episode 654 of Living Free in Tennessee. And it's a Homestead Happening update day. I need water now. And it's a Homestead Happenings update day. So we're going to talk about everything that's happened on the homestead in the last 2 weeks since I headed out to Jack Spirko's. I have a little bit of a cold, so there may be some places where you hear edits. If I have a coughing fit, I'm taking a break. And when I do that, I have to come back and edit, but no big deal. People on the live stream are just going to bear with me on this one. We're going to talk today about forage. And we're also going to talk about some livestock things that are changing. Winter is coming and all sorts of other things. That's coming in this episode. Before we hop into that, though, I want to remind you that tomorrow, Saturday, November 19th, 11 to 3, I'm doing a power pantry planner webinar. What is that, you wonder? Well, whether you have a pantry or you don't have a pantry, you should have a pantry. I'm going to share with you all of my systems that I've developed over the last 15 years here in one sort of solid outline, along with providing a planner that you can fill out on your own to either repurpose your pantry into something that works for you rather than something you're feeling panicked about keeping up with, or develop one from scratch. I'll include ways to do quick starts if you don't have anything together yet and you're feeling pretty pressured to get that done. I'm also going to share with you biggest mistakes that people make when they're doing their pantries or preparing for long-term with no food. That's all happening tomorrow. And if you decide to participate this and you're a member, log in for your special instructions on how to get that. And if you want to buy it, it's $97. Comes with a whole bunch of add-ons over at livingfreeintennessee.com/pantry. And the cool thing is, if you cannot come on Saturday, then this apparently is not clear. Yes, you get the recording. I've had a lot of people say, but I can't make it. Can I get the recording? The answer is yes. Woo! Wow, we're only like 3 minutes in, guys. The thing hit my chest. Maybe I should do this interview style. What do you think? Anyway, so that's over at livingfreeintennessee.com/pantry. It's going to be a really good one. We've got some really fun stuff that we're doing. We're going to play a few games while we're on that episode. The other thing I want to do is thank today's show sponsor, which is freesteading.com. This is an online community where you can connect with other homesteaders, preppers, freedom-minded people. This is not a freedom of speech platform. They encourage you not to abuse each other, but we should do that anyway when we are interacting or arguing online. Yeah, Andrea Snow, excited for your pantry class tomorrow. Me too. I'm hoping this doesn't happen while it's happening. I'm going to have like all the tea queued up. But we've got a really fun program set up for you. And I even have Survival Punk coming on that one. Anyway, freesteading.com. Head on over there. Connect with me there if you're interested in interacting in a freedom of speech environment. Finally, if you want to hear something about the homestead or get your question in a Q&A show, you can do that by emailing me, Nicole, at livingfreeintennessee.com, or go over to livingfreeintennessee.com, click on contact. Those emails come to me, and I file them away for a show like today, where I start with the homesteading happenings and then do Q&A. With that, it's time for our first segment of today's show, Forage. This is where we talk about what we are finding on the homestead. That's right, what we're finding on and around the homestead, really, because there's just lots of woods around me that we can still tap into for value today, right? So the first thing I'm going to bring up is persimmons, right? Persimmons. Those are coming off the trees. They are ripe right now. They will be coming off the trees into mid to late November, usually in Tennessee, and they're delicious. And you guys know I'm a keto eater. I find a persimmon, I'll eat it. One, right? And I will confess that I did not eat fully keto at Jackson. I have not fully gone back because I've been sick this week. I didn't want to go through the keto flu at the same time I was going through the cold, the great cold of 2022. The watercress. We've had 20-degree nights, and the top of the watercress looks a little burnt, but you can still harvest below that frostbite area and get some good watercress. It's going to be done for the winter soon. A really cool thing to do right now is harvest it, dice it up for soups and stews, put it in appropriate sized packages for that, throw it in the freezer. Works great as a stew, and it packs some serious nutrition from the vitamin standpoint. Mullein is going strong. We'll have that all winter. I've been making tea with mullein this week to help with the congestion. I probably should have made some before this podcast this morning because we've got the scratches pretty bad. But you just take one mullein leaf, put it in a teapot, pour boiled water over the top of it, let it steep for 5 minutes. That's mullein tea. If you want it not to taste like grass, add some peppermint tea or another tea that you like. It's actually pretty helpful when you have the symptoms I have this week, which is a little bit of scratchy in the chesty and the throaty. It helps with congestion, and it helps smooth out some inflammation in your vocal cords. So I really do like mullein for that. Anything that's underground right now is harvestable if it's not something that rots underground, like sweet potatoes. Ooh, my sweet potatoes are outside. Dang it. I should bring those in. Anyway, things like Jerusalem artichokes you can forage right now. Even the daylily tubers you can forage and eat right now. And that's something that's important to know, because if you were really having to live off the land and couldn't go to the store to get some out of season vegetables, out of season, you know what I mean? Tubers would be hugely awesome. Dandelion root, stuff like that. The key to finding those is knowing where they are in the summer and either marking it or mentally marking it. And as you do this more, you get better at mentally marking it. And then you go back to those spots. You already know what the roots look like. Dig them up and you're good to go. Likewise, sassafras root. Now's a good time. In the spring, you get the leaves. Ooh, a bird. Squirrel. And in the winter time and they're dormant, they're going dormant now. So all of that flavor is going into the roots. That's when you harvest the roots and make sassafras tea. Delicious. So I can't say enough about all of the wonderful roots that we have. I'm going to cough again. It's going to be a fun one to edit. I still need to plant my garlic. I still can. I also have 5 more saffron crocus that I did not put in that Tactical was supposed to plant while I was gone, and he did not. So I'm going to find a spot for those. I may put them in the aquaponics system, actually, because they'll do pretty well there. Although, we may be moving that aquaponics system in a few months. So, I don't know. We'll see. And then, I have a lot of lettuce planted in the wicking beds of the aquaponics system. And It is going gangbusters. We've been down at 20 at night, so that killed it, right? Hello, off grid with Sugar Creek. Yeah, right? No, I took my shower curtains. I have these $2 shower curtains from Walmart. They're probably $5 now because of inflation. And they look a little, well, let's just say not purpose made for this, but I have hoops over the beds. I throw them over the beds, weight down the corners as best I can, and that extends the life of my lettuce patch outside. I haven't started my lettuce patch inside. I'm confident I'm not starting it until at least after Thanksgiving, maybe not till Christmas, only because it's really busy here with coffee roasting. And because of that, the lettuce I'm getting comes from out there. So if I can keep it alive longer, we're better. So that's actually, lettuce is a little frost resistant anyway. And then with that cover, it works really well. So that's what's coming from the homestead. Next up, let's talk about livestock. And guys, this is compiled information from 2 weeks because last week we didn't have one of these. The rabbits finally got bred. So now we can have rabbits in the coldest part of the winter when they die rather than the hottest part of the summer when they die. We got 2 new does over the summer, and the 2 does needed to be, old enough to breed. Well, they finally got there, and that means that we could breed them. So we're going to give them their first go. Often with the first litter, though, the mom is not sure what's up. It's like, what is this? And then she doesn't properly take care of them, and they don't make it. We let does do that 1 time. If they do that 2 times, they become food. So that's what's happening with them. That means that they are due the first. Is it the first Wednesday of? No, I think it's maybe the second Wednesday of December. It's 4 weeks from when they were bred. They were bred on a Wednesday. I have it on my calendar that they're due a few days before they're due. What we do is we put their birthing box in there, and they make a nest. They pull out their fur, and it becomes all super warm. The interesting thing I learned, though, from a listener, because last time we had rabbits at the coldest day of the year, I wasn't sure what to do because it was going to get down like into the single digits, and they had just been born. And she's like, well, rabbits only feed their babies, twice a day or so, which means you can take the whole nesting box without the mom inside for the night, keep them warm, put it back in the morning, and then they'll feed. We didn't do that. Those rabbits died. I'm going to do that this time if we have, animals, rabbits born, and it's as cold as it has been here. It is a little unusually cold here for this time of year, although not out of the scope of what's happened. We've got 10 days below freezing every night. In contrast to last year, it was like 70s during the day, not cold at all. Wasn't sure if I should run the wood stove, totally different year this year. We are going to have a discussion, Tactical and I, about animal logistics, because one of the things we like to do with purpose here is have the order of where the animals are and how that all works set up logically so it takes the least amount of time to maintain. And that's worked pretty well until we added the sheep. And then we had to keep the boys separate from the girls. And the boys take more work than the girls. The girls kind of just do their girl things and they're fine. The boys are like ridiculous. We'll have some ridiculous boy stories today. And I think it's because they're bored. I don't know. It's just a thing. And so Tactical is thinking about changing how we do that so that the girl sheep are over further away because they're easier to take care of with the dogs. And the boys are here because we can keep an eye on them and they won't be constantly getting into the dog food. That's a whole nother story. That's something we'll talk about today. And then he's thinking about moving the locations of where some of the regularly maintained animals are. We'll have that conversation. I'll see if it's worth live streaming or not, right? Because, it might be fun to watch how we have those arguments. And we do argue. I'll be like, no, I don't want the rabbits by the roasting shack. What if their poop gets on the coffee? I don't know what I'll say. The ducks are not laying eggs. Normal, molt. I think we've pretty much caught up on the rodent stuff that was happening. So I don't think that rodents are getting them. It is normal this time of year that I start using recipes that don't use eggs. And if you notice, many like old traditional Christmas cookie recipes don't have eggs in them. I've never found any reference to why that is, but I know that eggs were harder to come by in December than they are a few months later, right? That's right. Letty says, Mommy and Daddy are fighting over the sheep again. That's right. While I was gone at Jack's, Tactical manufactured a whole new dog shelter. So they have this dog house on skids, and it has a very low entry. You go under, there's a wall halfway through it. On the other side of that wall is a hopper feeder. A hopper feeder you have to get your nose into to release the dog food. And the concept here is have that doghouse out there, let the sheep thoroughly explore it, get inside if they can get inside, discover there's nothing of interest in there. They can't see that there's dog food in there. And then once they've done that, put the dog food in there. The dogs will figure out that's where they get food. And that helps alleviate some of the issues we've had with one of our sheep figured out what dog food was. And once they figure that out, they'll do anything to get it. So that was deployed while I was gone. And yesterday, Furious Redneck walked into my house venting about a sheep named Brownie. And apparently Brownie's going to jail today. And I was like, I'm not even going to ask what happened because I don't want to hear more fury in my direction. And he's just mad at the world. So this morning he was like, so Brownie figured out how to get in there and how to get to the dog food and open the hopper. Pretty impressive. Pretty impressive. So that's the thing is, when all of the problems boil down to one animal, you start thinking about that animal. And even though we don't have very many sheep at this time, Brownie might be not long for this world because we don't want him to pass on that to the next generation. So we'll be talking about that among other things. I think in general that dog shelter is a really good one, and it will shield them from the elements, which is helpful. We need something similar for the sheep, but we've also unearthed a very clever, able to crawl on his belly sheep. Maybe we just need to get him fatter so he won't fit through the door. I don't know. And then because it's winter and it's cold, the animals don't have all their fur yet, right? Because this is a little sooner than usual. So we were pretty purposeful this week about getting dry straw to the pigs, to the sheep, to the rabbits, to the goats, so that they have bedding they can nestle into on these cold nights. That makes a huge difference. I know when I was first raising my first potbelly pig, I just put bales of hay in his shelter. And I came out one morning and there was no hay in the shelter. What there was a haystack in the pig field. And I was like, well, I guess he didn't need that. And I could not find the pig. And what he'd done is made a haystack, and he was at the center of this haystack outside, not inside. And then when he heard me with the food, he actually literally jumped up and out of this haystack. He appeared out of nowhere and shook the hay off, came running for food. So they figure things out when you give them the supplies that they need. And there's a lot of fretting right now online about how to keep my chickens warm, how to keep my dogs warm, how to keep my livestock warm. And the thing is, to the best of your ability, if you can keep them dry and have a way to stop the draft, the crosswinds, they figure out the rest. And if you put a heat lamp out when it's, like this, what you do is discourage the growth of the fur that they need to protect themselves. And so it's almost like a baby goat that's just been born. You may want to intervene and keep it warm, or baby chickens, right? But a full-grown adult animal, if you're bringing it inside at night, you're actually making it less resilient to the temperature changes. And it's a hard line to walk. I know with my chickens, when it gets to the teens here, because we don't usually have teens, I will give them access to a heat lamp way over there that if they're too cold way over here, they can go to. But I don't just put them in a warm environment because that ends up being more abusive to them and more of them will die. You know what I mean? Than if I just give them access to some heat that they can do. So it's kind of a fine line. You don't want to encourage that unresilience in the animal at the same time if they're not, you know, completely able to get warm, or if it's very sudden, you do need to think about how can they be warm so they don't get pneumonia, because that's what we're worried about, especially with the pigs. We don't want the pigs getting pneumonia because that would suck. Okay, next segment is harvest meals. This is what we are cooking here from the bounty that we created this summer by growing things. And the first thing is, we didn't do harvest meals this week really until yesterday because the cook wasn't cooking. I came in with this cold thing, and because of that, I ended up not feeling very good and not really wanting to cook. So with that, what we did was we initiated the sick person protocol, right? Sick person protocol. That means you have thought about in your pantry. This is going to come out in the pantry workshop. You've thought about scenarios that your pantry needs to empower you with. One of those scenarios I learned the hard way in February of 2020 when I got actually really sick, where I couldn't leave my bed. I was like barely able to make it to pee, basically. That's how sick I was. Certainly did not have it in me to go to the pantry, pull out a jar, put it on the stove, boil it for 5 minutes, which would be a jar of soup, right? You want to boil it for 5 minutes before you eat it so you don't get botulism. Because let me tell you, adding botulism on top of pneumonia does not sound fun to me. It sounds like a recipe for death, and a terrible death at that. And because of that, I was starving. And when you're sick, you're like, I'm hungry. I'm not hungry. I'm hungry. I'm not hungry. And I'm hungry is like, and I want 2 tablespoons of food, right? 2 tablespoons. And so I finally, because Tactical was checking in on me from time to time, I'm like, I'm starving. I really want some soup. So he drove to the store, bought a chicken, put it in the crock pot. And when I found out what he's done, I was like, but I want food today and that won't be ready till tomorrow. And he came in about 5 minutes later. And what I had were leftover cans of things from my actual Airbnb that I had shut down. And I had 1 can of Italian wedding soup, and I had another can of tomato soup. Commercially canned stew or soup, you can heat up right away out of the can because they process them at a higher temperature, much less likely to ever have a botulism problem, although not impossible. Though it usually seems to happen in fish hatcheries lately. And because of that, I ended up having the Italian wedding soup and this bowl of soup, guys. It was so gross. So I had like 2 bites and then went to sleep. And then 6 hours later, 2 bites. I nursed this thing for like 2 days. It only got heated up once. I don't want to talk about what that was like. Okay, so after I recovered from that, I decided that in the pantry, there needs to be a protocol for when I'm sick. There need to be easy to access things that are palatable to a sick person, which to me means 1 or 2 cans in my house. This is different for your house. 1 or 2 cans of something pre-made that you can just reheat, like a soup. Maybe some packets of crackers or nuts or something you can just eat. Teas and tea bags that you don't have to mess with the teapot. Stuff like that. And I got just a little kit of stuff. So then, because of that, this week, I had also thought, well, I am the primary person who cooks dinner here. And if I'm sick, dinner's not being cooked for the person who is not the primary cooker of dinner, unless they cook it. But they're also doing double chores, so that sucks. So it'd be nice to have some easy meals to cook. And so before I left, there were some leftovers from the Food Forest workshop, put them in smaller packets, and I was like, here's some easy to heat things. So that's kind of what we had this week. A bunch of easy to heat things. I pulled the Chinese food ripcord, which means the neighbor who works in town stopped by the Chinese food store and got me my hot and sour soup, which is something I crave just about every time I'm sick. And and then bone broth. I have bone broth ready to go. I have powdered bone broth that I freeze dried. I have canned bone broth that has to be boiled. I have kits for making elderberry syrup. I don't keep it on hand. I make it as I need it. All of those things happened this week. What didn't happen, which is what usually happens, is it's basically a Thanksgiving scale meal 2 or 3 times a week. I have found that you cook a big old roast with sides on Monday and it lasts until Thursday. And then you do a turkey with sides on Thursday. And that's kind of how we rotate through stuff here. And that may seem like a lot, but I've actually calculated how much time these meals take to cook. They don't take that long. I'm going to do a whole live stream about that at some point. We didn't have any of that. We just had leftovers and it was fine. It worked. Mama Sauce made sauteed squash once and she kept up on the salads. It was delicious. Yesterday, though, I did do a harvest meal, and this was it. We have lamb in the freezer, and because I didn't feel like doing a whole roast or anything, I did ground lamb sauteed up with onions, and I added peas and carrots. I pre-cooked the carrots, and then I added a little bit of, I had some leftover broth from a taco meat meal earlier in the week. And I'm one who will mix all the things, by the way. That's what we do. We use up everything we can. So I put that in the bottom of a casserole dish. And I put a layer of cheese. And then I put a layer of a combination of mashed potatoes and mashed tromboncino squash. So it was kind of a mix with a lot of what was it? Salt, garlic, other spices. And I baked that, and we had basically shepherd's pie last night, and it was delicious. We're having it again tonight. It's so good. Active cooking takes more work than passive cooking for sure. Hope you feel better fast. It does take more work, but it does not take more time than going out to eat, is what I figured out. As long as you don't just stand there and watch things boil, right? If you figure it's like, this is my interaction that's needed, this is the timeline, check back on this timeline. I'll spend 15 minutes cooking something that takes an hour and a half, right? Is what it is. So that was the harvest meal of today. I always forget shepherd's pie because I'm keto. A way you can make that keto, guys, is to use cauliflower rice that you season well instead of mashed potatoes, or mashed cauliflower works great. As I said, I wasn't worried about, I do a pretty thin layer of potato on mine. I wasn't that worried about the couple of carbs I was getting, especially this week, just recovering from stuff. I know I'm supposed to eat pure to recover faster, but is what it is. We're not adding keto flu to this, right? Okay, next segment is winter on the homestead. This is where we just talk about some of the things that are different in the winter. One of the things that's different in the winter that was not different this year in the summer is grass doesn't grow. Well, guess what? Grass grew. We got some really nice rain in the last week, and the seeding that we did out after all of the, earthworks and ripping up of the turf out there from the food forest class, those have germinated. I think they made it through the frost. We have them kind of mulched in, not thick mulch, but a thin layer of leaf mulch out there and some straw to protect those little new grasses that are growing. We've got annual rye coming up. We have Timothy out there. We have oats. And I think we have buckwheat. So we just have a blend of things. Now, I'm not worried about the other things like plantain and clover. That will all come. That's already there. There's a seed bank that exists. So we just want to encourage coverage and then let whatever comes come. And I want to increase the amount of Timothy grass we have. I may throw some fescue out this spring, because you want to rotate those grasses through for the animals and to keep the earth from being, bare and growing things you don't want it to grow. So That's kind of cool. That means it was warm enough during the day for that, even though it's cold at night. And we finally got rain. Hopefully, we'll get another cycle of it this week. We are way behind rain-wise this year. It is what it is. The outdoor sink and the outdoor shower are gone for the year. They've been put away. We actually took the whole outdoor sink out and put it somewhere where it won't freeze so that there's no chance of the innards of my wonderful outdoor sink faucet getting frozen and busting. We have anti-water freeze systems for animal water. They are not being deployed yet. It's 20s at night. It's, 40s to 60s during the day. At most, we get a little bit of crystally water on top and just break it. And then, so there's not a real need to have the stock tank heater in there. I do have the stock tank heater in my aquaponics system going. That kicks on at 36 degrees. So when it gets colder, that water that's flowing through is warmer. It's 36 degrees and it's moving, so it's less likely to freeze. And I still have all the water going to all the beds. I did remove the drains on my wicking beds, so usually it holds the water a little higher, but I don't want that ice pushing in on the plumbing. So I took that out. So the water's just free flowing through. And I did that because I expect in December it's going to warm again. And I thought, why mess with it? I'll leave it on through December. And then once that's done, I end up completely making those two beds dry. And then I just keep water going to the ebb and flow bed or the fill and flush bed, depending on what words you use for it. And that I've had go down well into the single digits, and it's no problem because the water's moving. If it's going to get real cold, I'll drain that one too and hope the plants live. But I find winterizing the aquaponics system isn't that hard in this climate. If I were up higher, that would be bad. Okay, well, we have reports from base camp that the nipples on the pig water barrels are frozen. I was going to ask you about a stock tank heater. So apparently it's time to put the stock tank heaters in the pig waters, which we will do later today. This is how winter on the homestead works. So the aquaponics is mostly wrapped up, and I have to top water the two wicking beds now, which is where my lettuce are. As far as the sheep, the plan for keeping the sheep water from freezing is to cycle their buckets twice a day. That's it. We're not planning to, on the side of that steep hill, run some sort of anti-water freezing system. Our option from there is to start always giving them access to the barn. And if we do that, then we have an increased chance of exposure to pests. So it looks like they get 2 visits a day anyway. If it's a really cold cycle, we'll talk about what we want to do. Like if for a few days we want to bring them down to the barn while it's snowy or something. That's just up to us. It's always a challenge on a steep slope to keep anti-freezing water paraphernalia going unless you have electricity, and we don't. So your option is to change water out at that point. There's lots of magical ways to do it online that are just that. Magic. It's not like you can put antifreeze in the water and not have that impact your animal, right? So that's all the winter things we're doing. I still haven't planted the garlic, as I said earlier. And usually I'd be talking about winter garlic. This week I was going to plant garlic. I planted my butt in bed instead. That's what I did. So probably in keeping with former traditions for Thanksgiving, we'll be planting garlic. That's happened. Not a few times. It's happened many years since I lived here that Thanksgiving Day, we're cooking a meal and planting garlic. So we'll see if that happens this time too. Next segment is Holler Neighbors and Community. This is where we talk about what's up in the LFTN community that we've heard about, as well as any interesting things from the Holler Neighbors. It worked out really well after Jack Spirko's event that I arrived at the airport about an hour and a half before my next door neighbor did. So Mama Sauce and I and the next door neighbor shared a ride home. He may be regretting that now because I think he has a cold. And anyway, so we shared all sorts of things on Monday. But, well, the labels are all there. Yeah, sorry. They wanted the labels to ship the coffee. So, but it actually works nice to do a ride share like that, because why send 2 cars this far? I'm an hour from the airport, so is he. It's what it is. We also have done a lot of supply shifting. So the cool thing about having a tight-knit community like this is when one person is sick like me, I'm not going to the store. Why am I not going to the store? Because I don't want to expose people to strep or whatever I have, right? And when I'm sick, I know I have something. So I put out, a couple of times, Nighthawk, I've been like, hey, on your way home, can you get a blah on the way home? Now, that may sound like a pantry fail, but who keeps hot and sour soup in their pantry? Just saying. I do keep tests for the plague on hand, because sometimes you do want to know if you have the plague specifically. And luckily we had some on hand when we realized I needed to have that. And then I heard another neighbor was going to get the test for the plague. I'm like, send them the tests. Okay, who has, and then there's like all the vitamins you keep to keep your immune system up. You have vitamin C, vitamin D, quercetin, zinc, all of these things. We always tend to say, okay, does everybody have enough of that? Because the people who don't have it need to bone up on their vitamin C and kind of pump up their immune systems as well. So we have that conversation. So what kind of happens is it's like we put everything in a pool and say who needs something, and then send it out to them, and then we resupply from there. And the reason that happens, guys, is that my pantry is intended for me. It's not intended for the whole holler. And their pantries are intended for them. And we have a tendency most often to use a different set of things for a different set of conditions. And then sometimes something like this comes up. And I do not prepare my pantry for every possible illness that could come through the holler, because what would happen if I did that is I would have a whole bunch of stuff that I never use and it goes bad. So I have a tendency for the things that are unlikely to happen to not keep it on hand if it doesn't have another useful use. And I'm sure that's how other people organize theirs. Or I'll keep one of something. A good example of this is a box of Kleenex. I don't use Kleenex. It sounds gross, right? Well, I use toilet paper if I need to blow my nose most of the time. However, when you need to blow your nose every 2 minutes, Kleenex is nice because it has a little bit of that lotion in it. And you don't get the chapped upper lip, like, from here to here, chapped nose, I guess. So I go through maybe one box of Kleenex every 3 years. I don't keep 2 boxes of Kleenex. I keep 1 box of Kleenex. And when I start that box of Kleenex, if somebody's at the store, I'm like, get another one. And that's it. Because if I kept 2, I would be, it doesn't seem like very much space, but that much space in my pantry would not be there for the vitamin D that I really do need to stock, or something else that's more of a, I'm going to call it zone 1 use. Like if you think about the permaculture zones, you have zone 0, 1, 2, 3, etc. The things I use most are the things I actually make space for. And something I use rarely, I may make a little space for it. I may not make space for it at all. I may just depend on I'm going to go get it, or I can do without it. A lot of times we can do, I could do without Kleenex. It's a nice to have, not a need to have. So anyway, that means supply shifting during unusual things does happen here. And then it's been kind of cool to have the holler neighbor helping hands, where Tactical has been troubleshooting his 4-wheeler all week. And he's a couple of times needed extra hands and didn't want to use my extra hands, so he used Nighthawk's. Nighthawk came over. They were tracing down an electrical issue, which I believe they finally found. Only took 4 days. And there was much whooping when it was discovered. Likewise, many of us heat with wood here. And sweeping chimneys is important to not have fires, right? And Nighthawk's roof is really tall, and he has a chimney that you sweep both kind of from the top and bottom. And so if you're doing it by yourself, you climb up on the roof, you do the thing, you climb down to the house, you do the thing, you climb up on the roof, you do the thing, you climb down into the house. You see how that would be kind of annoying? So what he does is he gets Tactical over there to be inside man and he's outside man, and they do it together in concert, and it works much more efficiently. I kind of tell these stories because a lot of times we think, I'm going to go live on a homestead. I'm going to be self-reliant. I'm going to know how to do everything. And that's great. Sometimes it's better to have more than one person to do the things. It's way more efficient, like sweeping that chimney. And so as you're making your homestead life, think about your homestead community. Do you have somebody nearby you can count on if you need to count on somebody? Or are you all alone out in the middle of nowhere thinking you're going to do everything by yourself? If you're that latter one, it's time to get to know some neighbors, even if they're quote unquote not politically aligned, because it's amazing how many people will help people whether or not they're politically aligned. Just some food for thought. Finally, I did want to mention the LFTN newsletter went out yesterday evening. If you have not signed up for our e-newsletter, it's livingfreeintennessee.com, and you just click there and sign up for the newsletter. And there were a good number of network events, like meetups and things that you can go to. I was really pleased because people started sending them in this time. And, a lot of times I'm looking out and I just kind of, one or two people send them and then I add some other stuff. So I'm saying this because if you have a meetup and you're not in Tennessee, you should totally send that to me for the next network letter. They go out about mid-month. So right now, if you have something late December into January, it's time to send it to me. If you send it to me a week before your event, you probably won't make the newsletter because I've probably already sent it. But if you think enough in advance to get me date, time, location, short description, and how people sign up, like a link or email, that's helpful. If you send me an image of a flyer, I don't know what to do with that. I can't cut and paste from it, so it probably won't make it. And if you send me a really long, super long press release email, I may pull some pieces out of it. And you may not like the pieces I pulled out of it because I'm trying to keep short descriptions in the newsletter. If you look at the e-newsletter, you'll kind of see what I mean when you get there. Anyway, I love being able to use that as a connecting tool. And this year I added a little highlight section, a commercial section. And Christmas is coming, and some of you guys do things like make handmade soap that may make good stocking stuffers. So between now and about December 5th, if you get me that same kind of information, what it is, how to order it, I'll put that in the commercial section too, and we can really use this to maybe support each other as we go into the December holiday season. It's very fun to do. But the newsletter went out. If you missed it, then, go over and sign up and email me if you want a copy of this one, and I'll forward it to you. That's about the best I can do. I guess I could start publishing that as a post. New ideas while live recording. I'm a verbalizer, so I think of new ideas while I'm talking. If you ever see me like walking by myself, gesticulating and talking, I'm just working on something. Next segment is finances. This is where we talk about the finance of the Holler Homestead and just homestead living in general. And a lot of time I'm talking about what we're buying this year and not what we're selling. Looks like we have an interested buyer for our last half lamb. So yes, I got your email. No, I did not answer it. Yes, I will answer it. Wasn't feeling too well this week, so I haven't answered a lot of email. Looks like we've sold the last half lambs, which is cool because guess what's coming in? The next half cow arrives in about a week and a half. So there's going to be some freezer Tetris happening. And how much for ad space in the newsletter? You could become a sponsor, and you're more likely to get in there. If you'd like to become a sponsor of my show, email me, Nicole@livingfreeintennessee.com. Anyway, that's all. So we have money going out for the cow that we buy. We have some money coming in from the lamb. That's all worked out satisfactorily. It was very easy to sell lamb meat. I found a lot of people are interested in that high quality, antibiotic free, soy free, grass raised meat. And it takes a lot more effort to do that because you can't just throw the sheep in one place and pump them full of drugs and that sort of thing. But it's better quality meat and it's delicious. So I was really pleased by the welcomed with open arms sort of approach to the lamb situation this year. And that's pretty much all the finances from the homestead. We are at this time of year, I'm looking at on the fresh vegetable side, how to get some from the homestead so I don't buy them at the store, because you don't always know if they're going to be in stock. And lettuce is usually what we transition to right now. And then it's all the canned goods. So a lot of what the homestead living benefit brings me at this time of year is that we've grown food, we've preserved food, and we're tapping into that rather than going grocery shopping, which is why, I mean, at this point, I'm always a little surprised when I need something at the store. I need something at the store. It's like a weird feeling. Oh my goodness, I need to go to the store for something besides like chocolate and booze. Huh. I guess I didn't plan very well for the winter. That's how I always take it as like, it's a personal failure. I need to buy cheese. That's me though. I'm a weirdo. You don't need to go as far as I do. But if you go part of the way down the path, you do end up in a much more stable position, and that's pretty cool. Anyway, if you like the show and want to support the work we're doing here, you can do it in two ways. One, get your coffee at hollerroast.com, or this badass mug, the Holler Roast new mug that we just put out. Two, consider becoming a member. Just head on over to livingfreeintennessee.com, click on membership to find out more. And don't forget the Power Pantry webinar, livingfreeintennessee.com/pantry. That's tomorrow. $97 gets you a whole host of things. Get signed up while you can, and we will see you then. With that, guys, go out, make it a great week. Okay, Holler neighbors, if you're going to log on, I did send you the link. You should log on now, but we may not get any Holler neighbors because, this is the week I need the most verbal help. Anyway, so it's time for the Q&A segment of today's show. Steve Eversole's got my back, man. Are you there?
Hey there.
Hey, I can hear you.
Yes.
Remember that time you logged on and I couldn't hear you?
I do.
You know what was really going on?
What's that?
StreamYard was sending your audio to my TV.
Okay,
so your audio worked. It was me. It's not you, it's me. How are you feeling today?
Before. I'm good. I'm I had the plague, as you put it.
Yeah, we have the plague
yesterday morning, but yeah, it wasn't bad at all. And this morning I'm just a little congestion going on, but that's it. So it was a very minor one this time.
K-Bonk says he loves the Power Pantry name. Thanks. There was a lot of brainstorming that went into that. Tactical, where are you at? In the cabin? Unmute. He's not unmuting yet because he's on a 30-second delay.
Yeah, this stupid screen protector on my phone does not help either. I just walked back out of the cabin.
Yeah. Cool. So, how was it being on the homestead without Steve Eversole or Nicole Sauce in the holler?
Went better than it usually does. There was still a lot going on. I had to spend that entire day building a new dog house for the dogs to keep the sheep out, which didn't work. So the one sheep that keeps getting in there just got isolated.
Yeah.
But other than that, I mean, it was just trying to keep up with the normal everyday stuff and make a little bit of progress on other stuff as well.
Cool. And Steve, what's it been like coming home from Spirko's event?
Well, Tracy does a very good job of keeping everything in control here. So I didn't have really anything outstanding to take care of. So I just got to come in and get back to normal.
Awesome. Okay. So from the Q&A section email, I only have one filed, guys. It comes from Robert. He asks, is this a coffee roasting sin? And he sent me a video of deep fried coffee. What do you guys think? Is that a coffee sin?
Like what, deep frying the whole beans?
Yeah.
I would probably try that.
What about you, Steve?
Sounds very interesting.
But I'm also
love to
from
see what it looks like.
Mississippi, where every county fair they have fried everything. And they got fried like Hershey's bars.
I thought that was a Midwest thing, right, Letty?
It's a Southern thing too. I don't know if it's a Midwest thing or not.
Steve's just not sure he likes this idea based on the look on his face.
Yeah, not too sure about that one.
Yep. The comments are funny. WTF, DFC? I'm like, what is DFC? What is deep fried coffee? Okay. Thoughts on rabbit tractoring? Not sure if it's a thing.
It's
I
a
have
thing.
thoughts on. What are your thoughts on it, Tactical?
I am not going to do it right now because I have enough other stuff to do.
Yeah.
I would like to eventually do that, but I do not have the time to dedicate to building or finding something to buy to tractor rabbits in.
Yeah. That makes sense.
I mean, from what I've heard, it is a good method of growing them out.
Yep. Steve, you have opinions on that?
No, it's I've never grown rabbits. It's something I want to do, and tractoring is one of the things I do and intend to do once I get my next forever homestead. So.
Okay, so this is Confessions of a Homesteader Who's Busy. There's 3/4 of a rabbit tractor in my workshop right now, right, Tactical?
Yep.
How long has 3/4 of a rabbit tractor been in my workshop?
Probably a year. I think I was working on that last winter, like November, December time frame.
Yep. Hold on. Coffee drop on the keyboard. Yeah, so there is 3/4 of a rabbit tractor. They are not hard to make. You take hardware cloth, you make the shape, you make sure there's some cover from the sun, you make sure the rabbit can get to the grass but can't dig. So you have to have mesh underneath. And it has to be wide enough that the grass pokes up through it or the pasture pokes up through it, or else they won't get to it, right? And then you drag this thing around. If you don't have that, they can burrow and dig out, and that can be an issue. This is what I know about rabbit tractoring from talking to other people who rabbit tractor, not from doing it myself, though. So take that with a grain of salt. I know somebody who set up a whole area where they had dug down 3 or 4 feet and made it so the rabbits couldn't get out and allowed them to burrow in this area. And they just always stayed in their rabbit burrows. And they said that was the biggest pain in the butt because they didn't know who was pregnant when, because males and females were all together. And every so often new babies would like jump out of these holes. So there's lots of different ways to manage rabbits. I do have a tendency to depend on my pocket nick on issues like this. Does anybody know what a pocket nick is?
Indeed.
What's a pocket nick, Steve?
Nick Ferguson.
Nick Ferguson. So we joke that Nick is pocket Nick because you'll ask him a question and he'll just know the answer. And so he's like a homesteading encyclopedia or homestead phone app, except for he's a real person. We need to make a phone app that does that. And he has lots of advice on rabbit tractoring from tractoring rabbits, right? And it's not a bunch of BS YouTube video stuff that people may or may not be really doing. He's actually done it. He knows how to kill rabbits with tractors. He knows how to keep rabbits alive with tractors. It's part of the cycle of livestock, right? This is how you kill it. This is how you don't kill it. And what he recommends is when you raise rabbits, you keep your breeding stock in cages and manage that. And then you raise the rest on pasture. And the ones who die on pasture die. And you may selectively breed from the tractor to improve genetics. But you can also, with some small supplementation of rabbit pellets, actually not have that problem. And then you build a tractor, like I said. It's a relatively small tractor, fully enmeshed. Give them shade, give them water, and pull them through your pasture or your lawn pasture. Move them every day. They're going to poop where they are. It's going to fertilize. It's actually a pretty cool cycle. And you're basically mowing your lawn to feed your dogs or to feed yourself, because you will grow lots of rabbit meat that way. And I hear rabbits breed very aggressively, although we have not experienced this here. But part of that's our management. I didn't realize you need to, when you're not tractoring rabbits, put them on a diet. Don't give them free access or they get too fat to reproduce. So learn that lesson. As I said, you learn all the hard lessons in livestock, but hopefully this first round we'll get some babies. Nighthawk has been doing well with his rabbits. He has them though in cages and not tractored. So I've seen people do it both ways. Tractoring reduces your feed cost. Rotating them through cages, you still get rabbits. You can supplement by adding the grass in there. It's a much more manual way. How many magic methods have you tried to keep big water troughs thawed? Cow balls, etc. Would a deeper trough in the ground help if you could keep them from fouling it? Pack Rat, where do you live? That's the bigger question. So I've tried a lot of magic methods that don't work. The cow balls, I haven't seen them work. In the ground, you have more insulation, so that will help. Painting your trough black, so when the sun hits it, it absorbs some heat. That will help. Chopping it with an axe every day works, except for it refreezes. And if you're in the Midwest, you've got a whole different scale of I've got to deal with water to deal with. The best thing that can happen to you in the Midwest is you live by a creek that's moving and never freezes or rarely freezes. Or you're going to be dealing with this, or you add electricity. A stock tank heater works really dang well. Stock tank heaters are the bomb, right? Any other thoughts on freezing water from you two?
Yeah, for me, if there's electricity, there's a stock tank heater in there. Like, there just is, because that's one less thing that I have to deal with. If you don't have a stock tank heater, you have to start thinking about what else can I do. A black container as opposed to a white container would be better because it's going to absorb more sunlight during the day and it's going to get the water temperature up. You could also think about getting one of those little solar pond pumps just to try to keep the water circulating as long as possible. So just starting to think about any little trick like that you can use. And I mean, like anything, you just got to be careful because there's some really weird oddball. Oh yeah, if you throw 3 pennies in there and you put them in a triangle. So you just got to filter out the BS.
Yeah. Makes sense. And Pack Rat, I probably know who you are, but somehow I have not associated your YouTube name with your name, so you can email me who you are, because you're in Middle Tennessee, which means we've met. And I actually have a memory of meeting you, but I can't remember which you are. Sorry about it. Guys, when you have handles, I don't always make the connection. So Middle Tennessee, everything Tactical said is a great way to go. You're probably not going to have frozen solid cow trough stuff or troughs this winter that you can't bust up unless we go through a 1 or 2 week period where it gets super cold and never comes above freezing. And that's at that point, it's temporary. And I haul if I can't get other methods, I haul buckets of warm water out.
Yeah. And on that note, the goat water right now is a white metal bathtub sitting on rocks. Last year, it froze up maybe 2 or 3 inches on the top, and I just busted the top open with a sledgehammer. That's all I did last year for them, because goats will eat extension cords.
Okay, Pack Rat, I know who you are now. That was funny. I was like, Middle Tennessee, I probably know that person. Okay. Steve, what do you do about freezing water with your girls?
I used just a stock tank heater. I had a 55-gallon barrel, feeding 8 water nipples, and but I still had issues with the nipples themselves freezing up. So that was so I had to just supplement with a couple 2-gallon plug-in chicken waters. So I ended up buying 2 of those just to kind of to help them
The
out. So I got
plastic
that
ones or the
going.
metal ones?
The plastic ones.
Okay. Another thing you can do if you have electricity with poultry is they're tall enough to get their head over a metal bucket, and the dog they make these like dog bowl plates. It's round, it's about 2.5 inches thick, and it's a heating plate. You can put the metal bucket on that. That works longer than the plastic 2-gallon ones that you have, which will eventually fall apart because they're plastic.
Right.
But because we don't use them very much, those plastic ones are fine in Tennessee until they're not. So
Yeah.
it's pretty cool. But that's what I've used as a backup, because you can put any metal vessel on top of that, plug it in, and it keeps it from freezing in a way that isn't electrocuty. Because, electricity and water go well together. A little too well sometimes. Yep. And then, a heat lamp does a lot for water in a shelter, strangely enough. But I like the idea of the moving the water around. Okay, Deborah says, I've never ground my own beans. Am I missing the boat? Other coffee drinkers, what do you think? Fresh ground versus already ground? What's your opinion and why?
Absolutely fresh ground. I always did the crappy coffee before I met, somebody else who does amazing coffee like yourself. And so I started going straight bean, and wasn't just the difference in the coffee taste itself, but I guess when you fresh ground, it has all those natural oils and stuff that are still in there, and it definitely could taste the difference.
Yeah. Margo says fresh ground has much more flavor. Also true. Tactical. How about the military perspective where you just throw Folgers into your cup and stir it and just grounds be damned, drink it?
No. I despise Folgers even in the military. There was a point to where I had my own coffee and my own French press in the shop because I couldn't stand the Mestet coffee. But yeah, fresh ground is definitely the way to go. My coffee grinder or coffee maker grinds the coffee, so it's about as fresh as you can get. On top of the fact, I haven't actually ranged from the door of my cabin to the door of the roasting shack, but needless to say, the coffee itself is about as fresh as you can get it. But yeah, especially if you're buying from like the grocery store, the whole beans are probably still 6 months old.
Yeah,
but
they're still better than ground.
It's gonna hold a lot more of the moisture, flavor, oils, whatever in there longer. So you're definitely, if you're buying from the grocery store, I wouldn't buy ground at all,
Right.
ever.
Yeah, Margot's seen it. We call them the space station because we have coffee makers that do everything for us. They're not cheap. So when I bought mine, it was under $300, but I think it might be up near $500 right now. But Black Friday's coming, so keep your eye out because usually things go on sale. What we have is a Espressione Concierge, which I replaced my DeLonghi Magnifica XS with. The Magnifica is more of a tank than this one, but it's also like $800 now or $600. So I went with a cheaper option, and they do go on sale. But what they do is they grind it, tamp it, pull espresso, steam milk, do all of that stuff at the push of the button. So I've timed it in the morning. I get up, turn on the coffee maker, get a glass of water, come back, and it's heated up. And I hit the button. It's 45 seconds from when I hit that button to my first cup of coffee. I'm totally spoiled. I love that thing. For me, roughing it is a comb pour over where I have to boil the water first. But yeah, so Margot, it is a Concierge Espressione, and they're all over the place. I do know that you can get your if you are a veteran, you can get a veteran discount on it through Home Depot. So, just keep that in mind. There are ways to get it for less. Mid-range. Oh yeah, so Mama Sauce has a mid-range recommendation and has to go through the obstacle course if my suitcase hasn't been put away yet.
I just had to replace my 20-year-old or 15-year-old coffee maker, and I bought a totally manual DeLonghi espresso maker that has a very compact counter profile, and you turn the thing on to make the coffee and then turn it off before it overflows when you want it to. So you're totally in control. It does nothing automatically, and always grind your own coffee.
Yeah. So we all agree to grind your own coffee, and people are like, man, I don't want to. So here's the deal. If it's too much time in the morning because you're like, I got to get up, I got to make my coffee and go to work. I do know people who every night when they're doing the dishes after dinner, they grind the coffee for the next day. That is not ideal, right? Because you have like 45 seconds from grinding it to the oils are dissipating or whatever. However, it's still better than coffee that's been ground for 6 months at the grocery store. So, you know, some people grind it for the week. I don't judge your coffee choices. Well, maybe I judge you a little bit, but not really. Like, I understand that life gets busy, or this doesn't work with your flow, or it doesn't work with your budget. And sometimes crappy coffee is better than no coffee. It just depends on where you're coming from. But if what you need to do is grind the week's coffee and put it in a mason jar, do that. You know, that's still better than coffee that was ground, shipped, sits around for 3 months, and then you finally use it. It's a lot more stale because more of those little parts of the beans are exposed to the air. That's what's making it stale, right? In the bean, it's like it's in its little package. It's like you haven't opened the chips, but once you grind the beans, you've opened the chips. And we all know what happens to chips that have already been opened, even if you reseal them.
Yeah,
They eventually go stale.
Speaking from experience, if you're buying something like hollow roast and you have, you know, a quart mason jar sitting there and you grind an entire mason jar and you go through that every couple of days, it's still better than buying whole bean from the grocery store.
Yeah. Deborah says, I like low acid coffee. Should I try your dark horse or sample pack? If you like low acid coffee, most of mine will have a low acid result because of how they're roasted. I use air roasting, which is a lower acid result. You want to get dark or Siegler. So the darker roasts will have less acid in them. The beans, the ones I would start with would be hollow roast dark or hollow roast Siegler, which is a more of a French roast or an Italian roast. Or the Monsoon Malabar, because of how that bean is processed, it's fermented for a longer amount of time. More acids come out in the fermentation process. Monsoon Malabar dark. So that's where I would start. In general, if you're looking at another roaster's beans, go for lower altitude. The lower altitude beans have less acid. The higher altitude had higher. People in the coffee world swear by higher altitude coffees, but that's more acid. For me, I actually tend to like the flavors of the lower altitude coffees too. So it's like wine. It's like, what do you prefer, right? What do you prefer? So would a mortar and pestle do in a pinch to grind a bean, or is it just hearsay? I've never tried a mortar and pestle, but I will totally right after this. I use a blender when I don't have a grinder. A blender is a grinder. You can't put a whole pound in the blender and have good results, but you can put some in there. Margot says, I grind morning the night before because he sleeps. Afternoon coffee is fresh ground. Perfect. I need a better grinder because I keep breaking them. I have some experience with breaking grinders. Don't judge. I'm not judging. You know, not everybody, first of all, not everybody has room in their kitchen for every stupid kitchen device there is. It all depends on your priority. I actually went through my whole kitchen this year and kicked out everything that I don't use on a regular basis and put the things I use most in the front of the drawer and the things I use least in the back. It's totally revolutionized the efficiency of cooking. Steve, any thoughts on this?
I'm sorry, I got distracted by a work thing, so I missed the last.
So he wasn't paying attention. How dare you work?
Sorry.
That's okay. Letty wants to know, what did you do to get your voice back? Mine is still fighting to come back. I don't usually lose my voice for very long when I lose my voice because I sing. And that may seem counterintuitive, but I've learned how to support from the diaphragm, and I try to keep my vocal cords in shape. So they're like a muscle, right? If you lift weights, you recover from muscle fatigue a little faster. Like you get used to it and it works better. The same goes with your vocal cords. So, treat them like you're singing. And when you talk, you can sort of sing instead of talk. It's actually, I get my singing voice back first before I get my speaking voice back, because it's more appropriate to my vocal cords. So that's the first thing. The second thing is I just didn't talk very much. Mom kept trying to talk to me on Monday, right, Mom? I kept I gave her body language because it kind of hurt to talk, and I had laryngitis. In addition to that, I do a lot of vitamin supplements. Start singing daily again. Do your vocal exercise. As you may have noticed, guys, at the beginning of this live stream, I was coughing every 30 seconds. And now I'm not coughing. That's because my voice is warmed up. I should have warmed up before I started the live stream, but I actually slept in a little bit this morning. And I should have just started 5 minutes later and done some vocal exercises, because now that it's warm, I'm not getting the scritch and the scratch and the this and the that, right? So that's another thing. I do tea. So I do peppermint with mullein with ginger. Works really well. There's an herb called bitter root that the Native Americans produce, and that one I'll put in a tea or I'll chew on it. That works really well. Soothing tea with honey. All of those things are tricks that I use. The water helps. Keeping super hydrated, right? So I was drinking 1.5 gallons of water a day this week to stay hydrated. The more hydrated you are, the less your voice is going to mess up. What I don't do, alcohol. You know that hot toddy everybody says makes you feel better from a cold? I think it does. It does not make my voice feel better. It actually dries out my vocal cords and makes it harder on me. Bigerino number 2, lemon and chamomile tea and hot water helps. Yep. That also will help. It's just the thing. Yeah, if only I could avoid talking. It's tough with little guys. When you talk to the little guys, sing to them instead when your voice is bad. Like, stop doing that. It'll make them laugh, first of all. And, and that actually helps you not hurt your voice. You may have noticed when I was recording the Bigerino. you guys with your names on YouTube. I also started talking quieter because I have a tendency to project. So halfway through the podcast, I get a lot quieter like this. It's because I realized I am projecting like I usually do, and it was causing some in there. But now everything's warmed up, so now I could talk. That tells me that tomorrow morning I'm going to get up and start doing vocal exercises at 9, so that by 11, when I'm doing the pantry webinar, I'm not like coughing my nose off. So that's what I do. Okay, guys, any other questions you want to ask? I've gotten... Oh, no, wait, I have one here. If there aren't questions, we'll end the live stream after this question, after we go once around the horn. And I noticed there's a redneck in my office. Hello, redneck in my office.
It was too cold out there.
It was too cold out there. He came in. He's like, I know I can talk in her mic if I need to. I can see having a goat, sheep, or other getting bored at the water trough and idly chewing right through the power cord. To a surprise. So, tactical, will goats chew through power cords?
Yes.
Yeah?
I tried that with the goats.
Get in here and actually talk on the mic.
I tried that last year through a stock tank heater, ran an extension cord from the closest part of the fence to their bathtub that has their water in it. And they chewed through, fortunately, the power cord for the stock tank heater. So I'm going to relocate their bathtub closer at some point, hopefully maybe next week, and put a stock tank heater in there that goes into conduit
and goes underground where they can't chew on it.
Yeah, they will chew on it. What I've done before there was a redneck in the holler is I would run the cable to the stock tank heater and then unplug it and remove the cord from the pasture as soon as I didn't need it. And I never had chewing problems during that time. But I think it was just lucky because it's like every animal's like, what's this? What's it taste like, right? That's what they do. You know, if a chicken's pecking at the cord, it's not a big deal. If a goat or a sheep is chewing on it, then that's a problem. They'll only do it once, right? Maybe not if they're a goat. The other thing I've seen people do is run them through PVC or some other sort of shielding to keep it from being something it wants to be chewed on. Then if you look at stock tank heaters, they actually have like a conduit like thing on the outside of their cables. I wonder why they put those there. I bet that was with purpose. Goats can chew through that anyway.
I'll bet a goat will chew through that too.
Yeah.
Ask me how I know.
Ask me how I know. Where it's like we started this ask me how I know thing at Jack's. Goats can chew through the conduit that comes with your stock tank heater. Ask me how I know. Animals teach us so many things. So thanks for sending the Power Pantry webinar registration to your friends. Would love to see them on that. Guys, I want to make this clear. You get the recording. People keep asking me, do I get the recordings? Yes, you get the recordings. If you can't be there tomorrow and you buy it, you get the recordings instead. It's totally fine. It's like the way John writes sort of like the copy. It's a very long web page. I have a tendency to be like, here's a summary of what you get. So he and I are opposite styles on that. And about 3/4 of the way down the page, there's this one sentence that tells you that. But unless you get all the way down there, which I also don't have the patience to do, is what it is. We're two different people. Steve, what do you want to share with us before we sign off?
Not really much to share, except looking forward to the Thanksgiving dinner.
Yeah.
And wonder what kind of turnout that's going to be. And, my kids are going to be here too, so that's going to be awesome. So I get to kind of show them around the holler. And so, yeah, that's pretty exciting.
John is a silly Willy. I don't know what that was referring to, but it was in all caps. So there we go. Yeah. So Thanksgiving, we will probably do another live stream after the pantry webinar talking about what Holler Neighbor Thanksgiving is going to look like and maybe sharing some recipes that we're using. I thought that would be fun. I may do it while cooking some of the things. And hopefully I'll have more voice by then. But what we do every year is if you're in the community and want to come to Thanksgiving, you can come. Now, if I have not explicitly invited you, you should probably reach out to me to find out information on that. If you're like, I'm alone this Thanksgiving and I would like to come. People bring a side dish and it scales from there. We usually end up with 8 to 15 people, so it's not usually huge. And I cook a turkey. I will do my chestnut dressing. This year, I'm probably doing cranberry sauce. And so I've said it in the email what I'm doing. I usually do mashed potatoes, but then I discovered that Tracy, who is Steve's wife, makes the best mashed potatoes in the whole dang world. Right, Tracy? I know you're there. And she made them for the Food Forest workshop. So she's doing those. And there are already potatoes at base camp for that, some of which I grew. And we'll have those. And then other people bring different side dishes and it just sort of scales. We eat midday and then we have usually people get hungry again in the evening and we hit leftovers and hang out and have a good time. That's what we're doing. So that's kind of what Thanksgiving looks like here. I started that years ago before I even had the podcast with another friend, Jen Bowman, who if you went to Self-Reliance Festival, she was the vendor coordinator last time. She's a great lady because her family moved from California. I moved from Oregon. We didn't really have anybody here. So we became holiday families. So every holiday meal we'd get together with each other. And I don't know if she's turning up this year or not. She usually does, but I think her kids want to do Thanksgiving at home. So I don't know if they're doing that Thanksgiving Day, the day before, the day after. But she usually shows up, and it's just a fun time. And if we get time to go for a hike and the weather's right, we'll hike in the woods, maybe search for some wild mushrooms because wild mushrooms are coming out at this time of year. If I find wild mushrooms, they end up in that chestnut dressing. I put the recipe for that dressing out in the email that went to the network yesterday. You can add mushrooms to that. Just saying. If you have that, saute the mushrooms and add those in too. Be sure to saute them in butter with garlic though, because more butter in that recipe is better. There can never be too much butter in chestnut dressing, in my opinion. All right. Tactical. Anything before we go? He's saying no. Steve, you done?
I'm going to sous vide a turkey, and I'll be bringing that as well. And I think we're going to do a corn casserole. Yes.
Oh.
Corn casserole. We're going to do a squash spinach type of dish and some other kind of Brussels sprout thingy that we might try. So yeah, we'll be bringing quite a bit as well.
So there's going to be too much food. Well, one of our friends is coming from Nashville told me dessert is what she's bringing. So we now have dessert covered. I'm actually saving the heavy whipping cream from my raw milk to make whipped cream with for any of that. So Packrat says a very special, no, where was that? Yeah. A very special Holler Thanksgiving. That's right. Okay, guys. Well, thanks for joining in, and we will see you next time. Hope to see you at the pantry webinar tomorrow.